Good morning. So I am live. I'm here in my studio. So our next session is, does the Pocket 6K still have a place? And this session I am talking about the original Pocket 6K camera. And I've got one down here. Here we go. So this is my Pocket 6K. For anybody who's followed this channel for a while, you will know that I use pretty much exclusively Blackmagic cameras. So I'm currently looking at a Pocket 6K. The view that you are looking at right now is a Pocket 6K. So I've got two of these cameras. The shot that I've got over here, that's a Pocket 4K. So my wide camera over there is the 4K. As I say, my little handheld camera over here, there we go. This camera is the micro cinema camera, Blackmagic micro cinema camera. I'm a big Blackmagic camera fan. I think they're brilliant cameras. And as I say, I've got two of the original Pocket 6K. Now, anybody who knows about the Blackmagic camera family will know that they have brought out various variations on this camera. So the Pocket 6K, I don't know when it was actually released, but it was several years ago now, the Pocket 6K. They then upgraded it to the 6K Pro, and they've now brought out the 6K G2. And so the question today is, does the Pocket 6K still have a place? Now, I'll throw this up for you. This was the little review I did. So I have on this channel already reviewed Pocket 6K versus the Pocket 4K and which one is the best and which one would I recommend. They're both great cameras. I do like them both, but I do definitely prefer the 6K over the 4K. I think the image quality, there's a different sensor in those two cameras, and the image that you get out of the 6K is significantly better than the image out of the 4K. Now, in terms of the 6K versus 6K Pro versus 6K G2, it's worth understanding the differences that there are between those models. There's a few things that were upgraded as they moved from the 6K to the Pro and the G2. One of the things that happened was they did change the body shape, so the newer versions are slightly bigger than this one. It's difficult to see because this one, if I get this camera set up on here, this camera has been modified. So I've put a cage on it, I've put a top handle on it. At the minute it's got an external battery on it. It's also got a plate at the bottom here with the ability to be able to put 15mm rods in it and stuff as well. So there's lots of accessories on this one, which does make it look bigger than it actually is. The term pocket cinema camera is a very confusing one because there is absolutely no way that you could get one of these in your pocket. You would have to have very big pockets to fit one of these in. It really isn't a pocket camera anymore, but it comes from the very original HD camera that they had, which was pocket-sized. It was a much smaller camera. But they've kind of grown on from there. So this was the original Pocket 6K. As I say, the 6K Pro and the 6K G2 are a bigger body size. And that's important because when they built the 6K Pro, they built a number of accessories that mounted onto that body size. So there's a electronic viewfinder, EVF, that can mount onto the top of them. There's things like lens control options and stuff like that all attach onto that body shape and size. So it has to be that bigger body size to mount to any of those accessories. So this won't take the EVF or any of those other options. And that's important, and I'll come back onto that in a minute. The other things that changed with that, so with the Pro, you got the flip-out screen. So this one, it's just a fixed screen on the back of here, so there's no adjustment on this screen, which at times that can be annoying. There are certainly times when this camera you can't really see what you're doing on this screen. Either it's up above my head or it's down too low. You just can't see that, so it can be annoying at times, but I get around that by adding an external monitor to it. So for me, it's not the end of the world. It's a slightly annoying issue, but it's not the end of the world. The other things they improved on it were the battery capacity. These ones, so this one runs off the Canon MKii, which on that battery I think you get like 25 minutes of film time before you need to change the battery out. The new ones run, I think it's on an MPF battery, probably not this size, but a slightly smaller MPF batteries. Again, talk about MPFs in a minute. But there's also the ability to put underneath it a battery handle, so you can actually put 2 batteries into the camera base, which again just significantly increases the runtime. But again, I've spoken on this channel in the past about my MPF batteries, because I use NPF batteries on everything. NPF batteries run everything. So they run my monitors, they run the cameras. So this camera is running on an NPF. This camera's got an NPF in here, so I can power this on right now. And again, if I switch over to the handheld, you'll see this come to life. There we go. That's all just running on battery right now. And all I do is I put these NPF battery plates. So that's just a plate there that's screwed onto the top of the camera, and it then has a power cable that comes around and powers it off the MPF battery there. For me, again, I'm not bothered by internal batteries in this camera. If you were hand holding the camera and you needed something that was lightweight, then maybe that might be a consideration for you. But for me, most of the time it's going to be on a tripod or possibly a monopod. So the weight isn't that much of a consideration. I'm quite happy to do it. And again, in churches, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to be powering it off the mains rather than a battery anyway. It's going to be sat on a tripod, plugged into the mains, and I don't need to worry about batteries. I don't need to worry about runtime. So batteries has never really been a consideration for me either. Now you might be able to hear these cameras do have internal fans, and that's quite noisy. So I am going to turn that off again so we don't have any more noise running in here than we need to. The other things they added were ND filters. This, for anybody who doesn't know, this is an ND filter. Essentially, think sunglasses for a camera. An ND filter just reduces the light levels coming into your camera. Really useful, in fact I'd say critical really, if you're filming anything outdoors. But again, inside a church building, ND filters don't have a lot of use. Now, I'm pretty certain both the 6K Pro and the G2 both have internal ND filters, which, as I say, if you're filming outdoors, might be really, really useful to you. If you're filming indoors, you're very unlikely to need them. Again, I'm not bothered by an internal ND filter. Very rarely do I film anything outdoors, and when I do, I'm quite happy just to attach an ND filter to the outside of the lens. So ND filters don't really add a great deal for me. It might be that some of these things are helpful to you. It might be that you find an increased battery capacity helpful. It might be that you find ND filters helpful. But for me, none of these things have ever been a big consideration. And the final thing that they did as well was to increase the brightness of the screen. So the new G2, I think this is on the G2 only, is a brighter screen than all the others previously. And again, there are some times, particularly if you're filming outdoors, where the brightness of this screen is a little bit dark. But I never have that problem inside. Inside it's absolutely fine. In fact, most of the time I turn the screen brightness down. I don't need it to be full brightness for inside. And again, quite often churches, you're probably going to be at the back. It's probably going to be relatively dark. Even if it's fully lit inside a church building, you're unlikely to have light issues on your screen at the back. So I never find that to be anything of a concern either. So for me, the 6K Pro and the 6K G2 have negligible differences that would actually give me any real benefit. So for me, I think for most church use, the original 6K is still a really great option. The thing that's never changed is the sensor. The sensor is exactly the same in all of the camera models. So this same sensor that was in this camera is in the 6K Pro and the 6K G2. So the image quality is always exactly the same. You've still got your HDMI out for live streaming. You're still recording the same B-RAW. It's still Gen 5 color. It's still the same sensor. Everything is still exactly the same. The things that have changed are the accessories, the bits on the outside, the screen, the batteries, lens control options, ND filters. It's all those kind of extra bits on the outside, and none of those extra bits are, for me, enough of a game changer to make me want to change these cameras. I love the output that comes out of these cameras. It's a really great looking camera. I've filmed some really nice things with it. Both filming and live streaming, I think it works really well. I've spoken in the past about how I use these cameras. There's one church that I do quite a lot of work with who have a couple of the URSAs, which is the sort of the big brother to these cameras. So these cameras, as a rough ballpark, the camera body plus the lens, you're probably looking at about £2,000-ish. The URSAs, the big brother, you're looking more like £5,000 or £6,000 for those cameras. Significantly more expensive camera. But for me, I'm very happy to put the 6K alongside the URSA and run those two for a live stream or something like that. They sit together pretty well. You can definitely tell that the URSA is more expensive, but the differences are minimal. It's noticeable, definitely noticeable, but there's absolutely no problem in running the two side by side. So for me, as a significantly less expensive and still very reasonable alternative to an URSA, this is a really good, really solid camera. So yes, I absolutely think there is still place for the original Pocket 6K. Now, as I've said, there might be some occasions where you find the benefits of the 6K Pro or the 6K G2 useful to you. You might say that better battery life or ND filters or a tiltable screen. Tiltable screen is the one thing that I'd say if I could upgrade to a Pro or even the G2 and get the tiltable screen, that I would get some benefit from. But it's not enough of a benefit for me to say, well, I'll get rid of my 6Ks and upgrade everything to the Pro. It's just not enough in it. Now, one of the things I said at the beginning was I'll come back to this accessories thing. As I say, you've got the EVF and all these accessories that they've built to fit on the G2. And having sort of done a bit of research and things online, there's a few suggestions that people have made about the reason why they haven't yet upgraded the sensor in these cameras. And a lot of people are saying that because the URSAs, the bigger camera, hasn't had an upgrade for a long time. They've done a couple of upgrades on the 6K, but no upgrades on the URSA. And probably, I think many people would say the URSA is due an upgrade. It is relatively old, and it only has a 4.6K resolution, which although is fine for most situations, most of the newer Blackmagic cameras that they're bringing out now have 6K, 8K, 12K resolution, so much higher resolution. So it would make sense that the URSA, so I'm talking about the URSA Mini Pro, URSA Mini Pro G2 is the one that they've got out at the minute. That model, the 4.6K model, is probably the next one that will get the upgrade. And when it does, they're going to want to be able to keep the accessories that they've designed, the EVF and the lens control and all that sort of stuff that mounts onto the 6K camera. They're going to want to keep that alive and keep that going. And so one of the theories that I've seen online is that the reason they've upgraded the 6K to the 6K G2 but not really changed the sensor is because they're leaving a gap for an upgrade for the URSA 4.6, which I think makes a lot of sense, and they might well do that, and it will be very interesting to see what they bring out to fill that space. And maybe at that point, that might be a time to consider upgrading these. But for the time being, I don't think any of the upgrades that they've made to the 6K are enough of an upgrade for me to warrant changing this out. So yeah, I'm a big fan of the Pocket Cinema cameras. I love all of them. They're really great. If anybody's considering one of these cameras for a church, I would generally say they're a really good option. The only thing about them is they are in my opinion, they're definitely moving into the pro range of cameras. And at that point, the big thing there is I think you need to know how to run a camera. It doesn't really have any auto settings. There are some things that you can put into auto mode, but it doesn't really do it very well, I don't think. Things like autofocus. Its autofocus is not great. It's okay. You have to push a button. It then sort of hunts for that focus, and then it will find it, and then it will just sit there. And so if you're trying to track a preacher moving around a stage, your autofocus isn't going to lock on that person and then follow them as they move backwards and forwards across the stage. You're going to track them, you're going to focus on them, and then as soon as they move, it's going to go out of focus again. Now, I don't mind pulling focus manually. That works fairly well, and using focus assist, it can be quite. It's a nice organic way to change focus. I think it works fairly well. So for me, that's not a big issue, but you need to have a camera operator who is able to do that, who's able to pull focus manually, or use remote control focus. That's also fine, but I wouldn't rely on the autofocus in these cameras to do that kind of stuff. And it's things like that that just take this from a simple level user operating system to kind of a more advanced technical camera operator, somebody who knows about focus, somebody who knows about ISO and aperture and all those kind of things, because pretty much all of it's going to have to be set manually. Like I say, there are some options for auto white balance. There is an auto exposure box that you can tick and turn that on. It can do those things, but really it's very much aimed at a user manually adjusting all of those things. The user experience is great. User interface is really nice clear buttons on the back, all that sort of stuff is really great. So it is a nice camera to operate, and all the manual settings on there are nice and easy to use, so I have no problems in doing it. But you just need to be aware that basically you're in control of this camera, and you need to know how to make all the adjustments that it needs to make it work. And that's the one point that I'd say, if you're in a church where you don't have experienced camera operators, people don't know about how to set all those things, how to adjust all those things, then you might want to say, actually, let's find a camera that's going to automatically adjust things more easily than this will. So yeah, I completely think there is still a place for a Pocket 6K camera. The original Pocket 6K, I think it still has a lot of value. It's still a great camera, and I'm still a big fan.